Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. This is America's first sake podcast. I'm your host, John Puma from the Sake Notes, also the administrator over the internet, Sake Discord, and the lead mod at Reddit's r/sake community.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai, I'm a sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and chatting about all things sake and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand. Hey, John, how you doing?
I am recovering.
Me
still,
too.
I think a little bit. Yeah. Recently got back from the American Craft Sake Festival where we had a booth, we had a table, we got up on a stage. The last episode of the show, you guys heard the results of us being on the stage, and that was a lot of fun to do. But wow, it was a lot. There was it was a whole lot, Tim. What were your big takeaways from
in
this?
the biz? I think they call that action packed.
I think they do, or at least they definitely did at some point, or at least and they probably still should.
Yeah. So we were on location with our mobile podcasting setup, which we set up for the first time, and we were literally smack dab in the middle of a sake festival outside.
Yeah.
So we're painting a picture here for our listeners of how challenging our audio setup was.
Yeah. So in the past, we have done our show outside of our homes exactly twice. And both times were at Sake Bar Decibel when it was pretty much closed. It was just like us sitting in a booth with electricity, with power in the room, in the booth with us, and recording a podcast kind of the same way we would here. And so we had so many more factors to deal with this time. We had the fact that we're outdoors, and so the elements, the electricity was quite a ways from us. We had to run a really long extension cord to get anything at all. And then we had to try and get 4 microphones settled around a table while keeping everybody away from the Virginia sun.
Yes.
It was a challenge. It was a lot.
Yes. And there were taiko drums in the background that went on forever.
Taiko drums and a taiko drum lesson.
Yes. Yeah. So I will say this, John, we learned a lot taking Sake Revolution on the road.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Well, we're going to have a series of episodes from this craft sake festival. So it was hard on our microphones, but it was great for our content.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, as you mentioned, this is a series. The last episode of the show was us on stage with Blake and with Todd, and we had a great time doing that. And then the rest of these episodes that we're going to be doing, including today's episode, are episodes that we recorded at our booth. And we have a grand total of 4 more episodes coming. So today is one of those. So it'll be 5 in total. And we've got a nice little group of brewers that came over. I think we had a lot of fun doing these. And so do you want to let people know what we're doing this week?
So for today, we are going to be playing for you in just a minute our interview with Justin LeVaughn from The Void Sake Company in Lexington, Kentucky.
Yeah. That's, as mentioned in the interview, it's Michelle's hometown.
Yes.
So in my home, it's a very special. We were really rooting for The Void to succeed, I think. So it's really nice to be able to have Justin on the show. We've known him through the Discord for a while now, and it was really nice to meet him in person, to actually taste his sake, and to chat with him about what the scene is like over there.
Yeah, and as you'll hear in a minute from Justin, they make a lot of unusual sakes too, non-traditional.
And I think that goes to the idea of you have to produce for your market, right?
Yeah,
I think that the area the environment you're in is going to influence a lot of what you end up making. So yeah.
Well, We just want to tell our listeners that this was recorded outside in the heat and the bustle and the hustle of a active sake festival. So pardon our audio for this week, but we really think you're going to enjoy this interview with Justin from The Void, right, John?
I think so. I had a great time doing it. It was a fun interview.
I agree. So without further ado, let's take it away.
Once again, we are here at the North American Craft Sake Fest, and we have wrangled another brewer to come to our table. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Justin?
That's fine. So I am Justin LeVaughn, one of the co-owners and the head brewer at the Void Sake Company in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. And that's in Lexington, Kentucky,
yes.
right?
Yeah, Lexington, Kentucky.
My shell will not forgive me if I don't make sure that we specify that. And how long has the Void been producing sake?
We've just celebrated our second year last month.
Oh, wow.
So,
nice.
Yeah.
More spring chickens.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So we're still new to the American sake scene, but it's been a pretty wild ride. We opened up right during the shutdown of the pandemic.
Oh, yeah?
And initially we were going to do a kind of like ramen shop, like brew pub, kind of sake brewery concept. But when the shutdown happened, we had to pivot and just focus on brewing. But we're in the midst of a kind of an expansion right now. So we just, next week, we're opening up our ramen food truck and looking to expand the brewery a little bit.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, how did you personally get interested in sake? You don't just roll out of bed one day and say, I'm going to open a sake brewery. What was your path?
That be nice?
What was your path to discovering sake?
Yeah. So I had sake before, in like hibachi restaurants and stuff like that. But I started homebrewing beer in college for, cheap liquor or cheap booze or whatever. And then realized it was a hobby that you kept feeding money into. But started out in beer fermentation and did a bunch of other like wild fermentations, meads, things like that. And then kind of found my way into working in the commercial beer brewing scene as like a assistant brewer and head of quality control at a local brewery in Lexington. And we just kind of just stumbled upon koji. We knew kind of about it, but we had done a beer festival with different Japanese ingredients. And that was kind of our first introduction into koji making. And then once we got bit by the koji bug, it just infected us. And we
and there was no turning back.
No. Like The Last of Us, but with koji. But no, so we kind of fell in love with the process at that point. And then it was kind of one question led to another down the rabbit hole. And this was probably 2017. We had started doing this, and then we kind of brewed sake at home, and it tasted pretty good. And we just kept refining the process over several years. And along that way, we just kind of fell more and more in love with the process. And then we got to the point where we decided we could open up a sake brewery.
That's not the story we usually hear. That's awesome.
No. Yeah, it's one of those like the beautiful mind or whatever, like unfolding and whatever. Yeah. So, but it was a pretty fun process along the way. We're all fermentation nerds, myself and the two other owners. So, and then once we settled on kind of the flavors that we'd liked, because we'd had sake before, and it's kind of similar to our customers when they come in, that they've had hot sake squirted in their mouth at the hibachi places. Or had it with sushi. And then once we started doing that, we started drinking more and more, ordering or having sake shipped in. Yeah.
It's cool. Now, I can't help but notice you guys are kind of in the heart of Bourbon County.
Yep.
How do locals accept sake? It's like, I feel like when I think of Lexington, I think of downtown Lexington as a bourbon bar in every corner.
One of the things that's really interesting and cool about Lexington is in Kentucky or central Kentucky in general is the alcohol tourism there. So a lot of bourbon distillery tours, and actually wine is really big. Kentucky used to be like one of the top 10 wine producing states.
Really?
And then kind of mid 2000s, craft beer started to pick up. So there's a lot of alcohol tourism in Lexington. And all the drinkers there are more adventurous. So when you tell them about this new beverage that they don't really know about, they're willing to try it. And we kind of played off that. And so the reception's been really good. And also, too, in Kentucky, there's I forget how much foreign investment, but a significant amount of foreign investment is actually from Japan. So like Beam Suntory is huge there. We have a Toyota plant pretty close to us. So a lot of people are familiar with it or have had it, once or twice. But when we tell people like sake in Kentucky, and they're willing to give it a shot. And
that's cool.
so and the reception's been very good. Like people are pleasantly surprised with the sake that we're making, and we tell them it's, this is craft sake, not just more, I guess, mass produced type of sakes that they may be familiar with.
Nice.
Now, for you, when you started brewing your own styles, what kind of styles were you most attracted to? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about the types of sake that you're brewing at your place now.
Yeah, so we gravitated towards the Nigori styles of sake, and particularly Junmai kind of classification, but just the complexity that you can get out of a lot of Nigoris, with the different flavors and combinations of flavors that you can get out of stuff. So that's kind of what hooked us onto sake, and then we started gravitating towards more of the ginjo and daiginjo flavors. But we try to be as approachable as we can to a lot of the drinkers in our area, because sake's so new and it's more of a niche product. So we try to make it very approachable, and we focus more on the more flavor rich styles of sake like Junmai. And also with our particular style, our house yeast is number 9 yeast. So that fruitier kind of melon flavor paired with a more kind of umami and ricey sake is kind of like the best of both worlds for a lot of people. So you get like a flavor-rich sake, but very kind of fruity. So the wine drinkers have something to relate to, a lot of beer drinkers with that richness, and also some of the fruity styles with, IPAs and things like that.
Do you have a tap room as well?
Yeah, so we initially started just the brewery, and then once we opened that up, or started production and distribution, then we kind of converted our brew space into a tap room. So we have a tasting room and a tap room that we have local beers on tap, and a wide variety of different flavor infused sakes. So like our kind of tagline is where American craft meets Japanese tradition. So a lot of our brewing methods are more traditional and labor intensive just because we're so small. And because we come from a craft beer background, we try to entice a lot of those drinkers with different flavored infused sakes, things that they're more familiar with. And then we kind of introduce them more to the more traditional styles, kind of piecemeal that way. So yeah, usually we have about 9 or 10 different sakes on tap, and then several flavor infused and traditional ones kind of mixed in there, and some lighter carbonated style sakes for those hot summer days.
There are plenty.
Yeah, those humid Kentucky summers.
So it sounds like you're doing a fair bit of non-traditional sakes there as well.
Yeah. So we, like I said, because we come from a craft beer background, and what we fell in love with sake is, especially with the Nigoris, like I said, is the complexity of different flavors and how they all meld together. So it has a nice base that you can do so much with flavor-wise. For example, which we're about to try is our standard Junmai Nigori, but we do a coffee-infused Nigori. Tangerine creamsicle is a popular one. That's one that we're pouring today. Banana pudding Nigori, and just all kinds of crazy flavors. And so kind of our philosophy with that is we want to showcase the sake, but also pair it with those flavors. So they come off very bold, but we want those flavors to kind of shine with the sake and kind of complement each other.
Nice.
What is your most popular sake that you're making at your tap room now?
The most popular one, so we do, of our what I call standard strength sakes, I would say the tangerine creamsicle is popular. But when we first opened up, we didn't have a food truck there, and they were pretty sporadic during the pandemic. So people would come in, and you can't have too many 15 or 13% alcohols without food.
Yeah.
So we did a lower ABV, like a 5% carbonated sake. We call them sake seltzers just because they're very dry, refreshing. But it's our base sake, cut down to 5% and flavored. And those are probably the most popular of our sakes, just because, like I said, they're so approachable to people. But the flavored ones do particularly well, but also right behind them are the traditional sakes. So they're like the Tangerine might be the number one kind of seller, but then Opalescent, our standard Nigori, is right behind it with our Messenger, which is our standard filtered Junmai.
Have you had any Japanese brewers come in and react to something like the orange creamsicle Nigori? What's the reaction
We
been?
got to hear this.
They usually just go, oh. It's like you see like just kind of this excitement light up because they weren't expecting it. Like last night, one of the owners of Islander Sake, we had poured him. So we also do all of our infused stuff is used with like whole fruit or whole ingredients. And so we do a variety of fruit infused sakes, and we'll just go to local orchards and do U-picks. So we had a blueberry tart and we poured it, and it's very purple when it comes out. And so he was very surprised, but a lot of the reception has been very good with Japanese nationals and whatnot, just because it's something different, but it also reminds them of home when they have our sake. So
nice. Now, American food is known for being very big and bold.
yes,
The American South, particularly so.
yes.
Do you find that when you're kind of like tuning your sake, as you leaning into something that's going to stand up to Western dishes?
Yeah. So our philosophy is like if we call it Tangerine Creamsicle, it probably should taste like a creamsicle.
It probably should.
Yeah. So we'll go bold with the flavors, but not so bold that you can't taste the sake with it. But yes, we tend to go bold and with flavors that they're familiar with, but then slowly kind of introduce them to more traditional styles.
I think we can start talking a little bit more about the sake that's in front of us here. So you brought a bottle of the Opalescent Junmai Nigori.
Yeah, so this is one of our flagship Nigoris. Kind of our regular house rice is cow roast rice, but we also do get rice from more heirloom rice from Arkansas, particularly omachi. So we have an omachi genshu that we brew. But cow roast, 70% milled. And this one, for the Nigoris, we like that kind of rich, creamier aspect of it. So it is a little bit of a heavier, thicker Nigori style, but it's 13%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's on the lower side.
Right.
All right, well, let's give it a smell first.
Yeah.
It's got that classic Nigori aroma, little bit yogurty, little bit creamy.
Yeah.
And when I smell this type of sake, a little bit heavier Nigori, I always get that hint of pina colada, like a little bit of tropical coconut as well, like a little bit of a coconut.
Yeah, that's what the number 9 yeast, like I said, it doesn't put off like coconut aromas, but I guess when you look at it, it's very like opaque and white and creamy. And then the brain just says like screams coconut with the fruity esters from the yeast.
Yeah. But when you smell it, do you get that, John?
I do. Also, he did mention creamsicles several times, so I think I have creamsicles in my brain as well.
I've primed you.
Yes. The power of suggestion.
But to be clear, this is not the tangerine
No.
creamsicle.
This is just the Nigori.
Your standard Nigori. And this is a Junmai style?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's give it a taste.
Yes.
Cheers.
Oh, wow.
It's very clean.
It is extremely clean.
I was expecting something that was going to coat my palate a lot more and be a lot sweeter. And it's relatively clean and has kind of that dry finish. How did you achieve that?
The bluegrass area in Kentucky is known for its water, but it is a kind of like medium hard water. And so because of that, our fermentations tend to kick off a lot more vigorous. So it lends to a drier product. So instead of fighting that, we just kind of embrace it. And that's kind of our signature, I guess, flavor. But so we tend to the drier side of things. Like our favorite beers are a lot of like lager type beers. So very dry, very clean, crisp. So we try to do that in our sake. So the water lends to that. And also we do a longer than traditional Junmai fermentations. So we will extend that out. And we find it lends to a cleaner product. And then we do during pressing, it's a finer mesh cloth that we're using that only lets more of the smaller particulates through it. It's not chunky. It's very like light, creamy, almost pillowy, I guess.
Yeah, this is like the lightest Nigori I think I've ever had. It is, and it's got that. It has that It's kind of right up your alley. It's got the Tim signature on it with like a little bit of fruitiness. It's nice and smooth. It's got a nice dry finish. I am very impressed with this. Very surprised.
I'm very glad.
Because when you look at it, you're expecting a lot more of that Nigori.
Yeah.
So it kind of like threw me for a loop.
Yeah, sometimes Nigoris, when they're very thick and very chunky, they can have texture issues. Like if you're not used to that chunkiness or that extreme coating on the palate, especially the sweeter it gets, it can really coat your palate.
Yeah.
And this is very different from that. This is, like we said, drier, cleaner, and it seems very food friendly. So speaking of food,
yes,
from your brew pub or from your area, what foods do you recommend your customers pair with this Nigori Junmai here?
Yeah. So you really anything we tell people like sake pairs with
Go
all
wild.
food, but particularly like what I do a lot of with this is very rich foods or barbecue, spicier foods.
Oh yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Memphis style barbecue, so this is kind of my go-to for that.
Nice.
Or like Thai curry dishes, things like that. Or pizza, even pizza. But yeah, very rich, oily, savory type foods. Or fish, anything, salads.
If I'd had this blind, I probably would not have identified it as Nigori. If I covered my eyes and had me taste this, I don't think I would. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's stealthy. It's very stealthy, and I do think it will hold up to those big flavors.
I'm excited to hear about that because I know you don't get a very many Nigoris on your program, and
he's an observer, Tim.
Yes,
he knows. He listens. Yeah, we don't honestly. I don't think New York gets a tremendous number of Nigoris these days, so it's interesting to have and to be able to taste.
Yeah, and like this is in distribution, I would say this is our most popular SKU. And that's with the kind of tangerine, creamsicle, and flavor infused Nigoris. So a lot of Japanese restaurants that we partner with, this is one of their best sellers.
Nice. And do you find that you partner mostly with Japanese restaurants, or do you have like a broader? Are you getting this in front of people who are having burgers, for example?
Yes, both. I guess
that's awesome.
Yeah. So we try to tell people it's like, you don't have to have this with sushi or anything. You can have it with other foods. So there's several in Lexington, particularly in Louisville, which is a little bit further north of us along the river. Like fusion, like American fusion type restaurants that serve this with burgers and other like more American type style foods.
Nice. I think this would go quite nicely with a burger, in my opinion.
Definitely. So you mentioned distribution a moment ago. For our listeners who may be interested in trying, where are you distributed right now? Where can people find your sake?
Right now, just within the state of Kentucky, but we do use an online distributor called Beano Shipper.
Yep.
A lot of people may be familiar with that. So if you just go to our website, there's a link for in-state and out-of-state. You just go to out-of-state, then it sends you to the Beano Shipper portal, and we have 6 different sake brands on there as well. So our standard kind of Junmai, clear sake, the Nigori, the opalescent, and then a Genshu that we do as well, and then several different flavored ones as well. So I think 6 in total.
Nice.
And then probably going to be looking to add more of those or more brands like a wood aged sake, a Taruzaki as well.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't think there are too many Taru sakes being made domestically. That's interesting. That's cool. I like that you guys are getting out there and doing some different stuff.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun, like I said, just to play with all the great flavors. So like the umami and the savoriness of it just lends itself to pair with literally anything, and you can play around. It's a nice kind of playground, if you will, to experiment on.
What does the future hold for the Void Sake Brewery? What are your plans for the upcoming months and years that we should look out for?
So next week, I guess from recording today, we are opening a ramen food truck. So kind of realizing our original plan. So we're doing that, have dedicated food on site. It's kind of early in the works, but we're looking to expand the taproom and the brewery.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we're growing. We've outgrown our current space now and looking to offer more space for customers and also to help with production a little bit more. But we've also kind of cultivated a local music scene with kind of like bluegrass and amateur musicians as well. And then let's see, what else are we doing? Oh, we're starting to kind of expand more of our traditional styles. So we've kind of nailed down our processes for very clean junmais and kind of going into like ginjo and daigijo realms.
So big things are coming.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Love it. All right. So where can people find the Void Sake?
We are on all the social medias, well, mainly Facebook, Instagram. So
Mhm.
you can look us up on The Void Sake and thevoidsake.com for any updates or keys to purchase and things like that.
That's great. And then, yeah, of course, if you're in town, go to Lexington.
Yes.
It's not just about bourbon, apparently. They've also got a really nice sake brewery now.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming by. Really.
It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll look forward to having you on again in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Tim, that was fun.
All right, we're back
as
in the
promised.
present.
As promised, that was a lot of fun.
We're back to the future.
And as we mentioned at the head of this, like there are definitely some breweries that we tasted that we'd never had before, and the Void was 100% one of those.
Yes.
And I still think about that sake a little bit, like the idea of it had that like really, really deep Nigori look to it, but didn't have that a lot of the texture that you associate with Nigori. I thought that was really interesting how they were able to accomplish that. It was just a really tasty sake. I think I mentioned it's very Tim in my mind because it's got that like that light fruitiness and that dry finish. I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, it was surprisingly clean. I have to admit, going into it, I was a little anxious that their sakes were going to be too way off in left field for me, but that was eminently drinkable and really clean.
So yeah, thank you guys at home for listening. When we got 3 more of these to come. We'll talk a little bit next time about who we have in each episode. I had a great time.
Yeah, I had a great time too. And we do want to thank our listeners so much again for tuning in. If you're enjoying Sake Revolution and these on-site podcasts that we're beaming out to you, consider joining our Patreon. It's a wonderful community we have there, and it's a great way to support the show.
And I want to say one thing about before we go any further with that, Tim. We got to meet a lot of listeners that we'd never met before.
That was amazing.
That was really great. Thank you to everyone who took a moment to come up to us and say hi and tell us that you listened to the show. That it was hot. It was uncomfortable. We were working really hard, and that made my day. It really did. It was really great to hear.
110% agree.
Yeah. So on that note, please grab a glass. Remember to keep drinking sake and Kanpai.